people really feel like they shouldn't have to pay to learn how to parent because you should just know how to parent. But that is not true. It is a skill just like any other skill. And it's just like I tell my parents when they're complaining about their teachers, I always say, remember, one, we already talked about your home baby is not your school baby. But two, that teacher is not just dealing with your school baby. They have to think about the environment of the entire class.
So you said Paris has completely different needs than, what is the second daughter's name again?
Riley, yes.
Different needs. So in the Peace Corner, how would you have the items that would meet the needs of Paris and Riley at the same time?
So we have that common corner in our playroom, which is, so I'm so glad you asked. And what it looks like is having different options for coping strategies. And that's why we have the poster, right? So the poster itself has a trampoline on it because we have a trampoline downstairs for the ability to jump your mad or you're sad or you're frustrated or whatever your feelings are. It has a cup because maybe you want to sip something cool to help deal with your mad, you're sad, you're frustrated, you're bored, you're annoyed, your feelings. It has the traceable items so that you can trace and breathe as an option. We have a rocking pad. Some people call it, I'm trying to think of what the word is for, but it's basically like a thing that you could cocoon, you can sit in, and it hangs a hammock, but it's like a pod hammock. And you can rock in the pod hammock while you have pressure coming around you and enclosing you in to help you calm your body down. We have a stability ball. And you can, Paris, jump on that stability ball or roll on that stability ball. Or Riley, you can slowly rock on that stability ball and just get your balance in your body back centered. We have the option of playing with stuffies, right? Maybe you want to squeeze and hold your stuffy and that's all you need. Or maybe you need to hit your stuffy, which is... Paris is like, I don't want to hug my baby. And I was like, okay, well, we're not going to hit our stuffy. So what can you do to get this anger out? And what we realize is throw a ball. So we got some balls and she'll throw the ball against the wall and back out. And that gets her that anger out. So having different options that have different support needs. And that's where the coping strategies poster comes in. One, your children, when they're in that what's the word? I call it red brain but Daniel Siegel calls it when they flip that lid. So when your child is split their lid, especially if they're autistic, they may not have the words to tell you how they need to calm down. But if you have visual pictures there, they can point to that picture to tell you what they want to do to calm down their emotions. Now, as their parent, and hopefully eventually as their teacher, you'll start learning it and you'll know what their preferred activities and you can just start guiding them to it when they're having those emotions. But that comes with connection and time, connection before correction, right? But the idea is to have different options that may support a plethora of different children because some children do just want to breathe or they just need to count. And that does help to calm them down. And that's my Riley. My Riley, I have plenty of videos. She'll tell other people, take deep breaths and let's count to 10. And that's her way of calming down. But then I have my Paris, and my Paris might need to jump. She might need to bang. She might need a big squeeze to get her to get somatically and sensory, get back regulated to where she needs to be so that we can actually work through her emotions and find out what happened.
This conversation has been really insightful, especially seeing this from the perspective of a parent. As a teacher, I can really now connect and see what are the needs of my students? What is it? And having had a conversation with a parent definitely helps. One of the things that pops up for me is as a preschool educator, that is when things are discovered. We're starting to see children, how they interact, especially in the classroom, which is so different than home, like you mentioned. some of the parents that I've worked with were really excited to go and get diagnosis or just get evaluation to see what their children needed. And it was really important to me because the classroom teachers sometimes didn't know how to support these students. Other students also didn't know how to interact with one another. It's really difficult for a teacher because we don't want to label, we don't want to identify. However, parents sometimes aren't aware because that's all that they have seen in their home. But we start to see that there's something unique and maybe we need to figure out a prescription on how to support them. And maybe prescription is not the right word, but because when we don't understand someone, we need to know their needs. And that's what I mean. So what are some of the steps parents can take? Because I think getting a diagnosis is a gift. It's not a stigma. And years ago, I know there was stigma attached to being unique, but I think we're all unique. Like, I don't know one person that is, what is that normal state, right? In Montessori or in education, we look at the normal is the normal state of being for that particular student. So if they're, to have that normalization in a classroom, it looks different for different children. You and I have talked about this a little bit. What are some of the ways that parents can take that first step and start looking at, okay, what does my child need? Only because they too at home are probably looking for ways to work with their children, and maybe they're also not understanding them. It's not just the school.
Absolutely. So I always say, do start the Montessori method at home. And that is not a joke. What I mean by that is Maria Montessori really talked about observing your child just for 2 minutes out of the day and just seeing how they interact and play without interrupting, without navigating, without manipulating what they're doing, watching them. That helped me so much. That is how my children got diagnosed at 2 years and 18 months. Because I was watching them and I was able to see that when her name is called, she does not look. And when she wants you to get something or to see something, she doesn't point. She grabs the thing and brings it to you, or she brings you over. And I was able to see that there isn't really a lot of imaginative play happening here. She's just labeling things and laying it down and lining them up in different rows, but she's not really doing any imaginative play. And I was also able to see, hey, she doesn't play with other kids. Even when other kids are around, she purposely avoids them and does her own thing. But I don't know if I would have been able to see that with the hustle and bustle of the world that we live in if I didn't dedicate 2 minutes every day to just watching my child play and interact. So that is a big part. We call it in Supernova Parenting, we call it being a detective. You really are a detective in the beginning. Your child is a human. I always tell parents, because I do use humor, I say, when you have a new love interest and you're getting to know them, you're a detective. You want to get to know them. Well, you have a child and it's a human and you want to get to know them. You are a detective. And so being able to watch them and see what support needs they're having and challenges and assets they're having allows you to be that advocate when you're talking to that teacher or that doctor or that psychologist about what their needs are, about where you're seeing challenges for them, about what are your roughest times in the household. But you got to be a detective and you actually have to start tracking things and writing things down. That is really the first step, is to start decoding, start getting to know your child, be a detective.
And being that detective in the classroom is one of the things that you guide the children and you're watching. And when you notice something, it's that difficult conversation, which is difficult for both the teachers. It's difficult for the parents, but it's best for the students because we just want to identify what their needs are earlier. Because when we know something earlier enough, right, we know that through repetition, there is perfection. So we can support that individual being in providing them what they require developmentally to get to that next step and next step and next step. And I think we're talking about a lot of resources. So this podcast is international. However, in the United States, we have something called the regional centers, right? And in regional centers, there are a lot of support. Can you speak to regional centers a little bit?
So because of the Autism Cares Act, every state has to have a parent regional support center. And that center has everything from educational classes and training to just the resources that are available. And they also have mentors. So let's say you go to that website, you find your parent center, and you're like, this is a lot of information. I feel overwhelmed. You can actually sign up to have a mentor walk you through, okay, well, what do you think is happening? What kind of help and support do you need? Also, if your child is 3 and under, every state is mandated to have an early intervention program, meaning that your child, whether if they're 9 months to 18 months, and you see signs, not necessarily that they have autism, that they're struggling with speech and that they might have a speech delay, that they're struggling with motor skills, mobility, and you just want to have them evaluated and get support for free. Your child does not have to be diagnosed with autism to get speech therapy through the early intervention program. Your child does not have to be diagnosed with autism to get occupational therapy because they're having sensory issues and maybe they're not eating enough and they're having nutritional issues. So if you're dealing with these things, I want you to get the labeling of autism and the negativity and connotation out of there. But I also want you to understand your child does not have to be diagnosed with those things to receive support and care when they are 3 and under. The early intervention program is in every state, and you can refer yourself or you can talk to your pediatrician and they can write you a referral for the program. And all you have to do is type in early intervention and your state's name in Google, and your program will show up.
Very, very encouraging. And now a little bit of encouragement also for parents who are at a pizza party or birthday party, or they visit the classroom and they see their child is behaving or interacting in a unique way than other children.
I'm going to tell you, parent, to embrace different. I don't know how else to tell you that forcing your child to be normal is going to make your life really, really hard. And that's just you. We're not even talking about that child who is being forced to change how they think, how they perceive the world, what their brain is telling them to be this normal that we so care about. I want you to embrace different. Here's what I mean by that. Maybe your child doesn't like big, giant birthday parties. Maybe your child wants to have a quiet day with a few of the kids that they know and actually get along with at your house, their safe space, with a little cake and a little puzzle, because you are a detective and you got to know your child. And is that what everybody else is doing? No, that's different, but it's okay for you. I really want parents who have children who are neurodivergent to start thinking about what their life can be in support of their child instead of what their life should have been if their child didn't have autism. Because I'm autistic. I've been to 27 countries. I am writing a book. I have graduated college. I have served in the military for 7 years. I have 2 children and a loving husband. I am a homeowner. I'm a certified positive discipline educator. There are possibilities with neurodivergence. Neurodivergence doesn't stop anything, but it does stop some things. There are some things that we either don't want to do because of sensory needs or executive function needs, or that we literally can't do. And so forcing your child to go to that sensory overloading birthday party because everybody has a big giant 5-year-old birthday party at Disney World, and so my child needs to have a 5-year-old party at Disney World, probably is not the best thing. Start thinking about what is fun and great, but supportive of me, my child, and our community. And I promise you, a lot of those situations will go away. Because now when my daughter is stimming and some kids come up and they try to play with her and she just looks at them crazy, my daughter or one of her cousins or one of our neighbor babies will say, oh, Paris doesn't have all of her words. She has autism, but she's just playing over here. You can play over there. They'll speak up for her before I even get a chance to, because We've been working. This is our village. We've been educating, and we make sure that we're doing things to support parents and our household and our community.
So, Natasha, can you tell us a little bit about how you created this community where other children from the neighborhood come over and all the wonderful stuff so that when they're at school, they already had millions of friends?
You have to raise different. So when I moved here, I'm a Georgia girl. I'm an old country girl. So when I moved here, I baked cookies and I put them in little tins from the Dollar Tree. And I went to all my neighbors with the cookies in the tins and a little card that told who I was, that I had 2 autistic children. And if they saw some craziness, like a naked child trying to get out of the door or anything like that, that's what it was for. Mm-hmm. Because one, I did want them to understand and know that they may see different because my house is different and where that is coming from. But two, my neighbors are my community. Of course, you'll have instances where people are people and some people don't want to be a part of your community and you accept that. But I'm going to try. I'm always going to try. And so that was my first step. I baked those cookies. I introduced us. My oldest helped me make the cookies. So she came with me, but she didn't talk to anyone. She was just like, while I was talking. And then after that, we do things like when my children, especially when my children were young and they weren't at school, we were doing water play in the front yard with the swimming pool and a table with sand and different things. And little children in the neighborhood would ask their parents. Sometimes I had parents literally in their car stop and be like, can my kids come and play? They keep asking. And I'd be like, sure, of course, come and play. And I would make slime and we would have slime on tables and the children would all come and make slime. I throw a annual Halloween party because I'm just not comfortable with the whole concept of trick-or-treating for autistic non-speaking children.
Yes.
But I still want my children to enjoy the fun of, you know, the witches and the ghosts and dress up and role playing candy, especially because we're very strict about sugar. And I let them get away with sugar on Halloween. So I throw a Halloween party and my Halloween party always has a scientific theme. I'm usually Miss Frizzle. I dress up as Miss Frizzle from the Magic Bus and we make slime or we make Play-Doh or we make sand. We make some type of scientific experiment. We have a pumpkin egg hunt because I have little pumpkins that I hide candy in and we hide those pumpkins all over the yard and the children run out and go get them. We have a pumpkin painting part, but basically it is a neighborhood known thing. We've been here since 4 years. So, 4 years we've had our Halloween party and I make Halloween food. I make a foot loaf. It's a meatloaf that's made out of a foot and looks like has bones coming out of it and everything. I make jerk ribs because my husband is Jamaican. And so we have the ribs, we have the spaghetti guts, we have all different types of ghoulish foods. And the whole neighborhood is welcome to come out and their children come out and have a safe, fun place to explore and enjoy Halloween and also learn about autism. Because if you come to anything in my house, we're going to have a segment where I read a book or I explain or I give some type of lesson about autism. You actually have to go out and connect to build community. And that's a big thing sometimes because I also do these things with my family, but my family is in Rome, Georgia, which is about 2 hours away. And so a lot of times the same thing happens for other families who are parents of neurodivergent children. Usually the resources are in major cities. They're not in small towns. So if you're from a small town or your family's in a small town, you find yourself either driving constantly to the big city or just having to move to that big city to support your child and losing the village you had at home. And so you may have to get okay with the idea of building your own community. And that's really what we had to do here is build our community.
The community that you have built, it's so supportive when your children get on that school bus because these are children from the community. that are on the
Exactly.
bus.
So the same children I made slime for on Halloween are holding my daughter's hand and saying, "It's okay, Riley, I got you," for her first day of school. And it's really what helped me because, we talked about this as friends, not on the podcast.
Yeah.
But the first day of Riley going to school, her school is not a well-funded school. Paris' school, of course, is because it has specialized autistic classes. It is a well-funded school, but Riley School is a public school that we've been rezoned for. And I can tell that there may have been some lines drawn in certain places, but it's just not well-funded. And so I was very nervous at first about letting her go there. Paris' school, because it has specialized autistic classrooms, it is a elementary school in our public school system, but it has specialized classrooms for autistic classes. And because of that, of course, it gets a different type of funding. You can tell the difference, like in the look of the school, when you go inside the school, when you go inside the classrooms, the resources, even the teachers' smiles, you can just tell the difference. And so initially, when I went with Riley to meet the teacher, I told my husband, I was like, I'm going to transfer Riley to Paris' school. I'm going to tell them I want both of my kids to be at the same school. I have that ability. I know I do. I'm about to put in this transfer. And then the social worker, human Adler part of me was like, okay, Natasha, but this is your community. This is the school that all your neighbor babies, that's what I call all my neighbor children who come, go to. So if you have a chance to work with this teacher, to work with this school, to build, to help, to teach them positive discipline, to teach them about social and emotional regulation, how to use the Common Corner, how to support autistic children, why wouldn't you do that and make that school a better place as opposed to just leaving the school high and dry and going to a better place? I did have to sit with that for a moment because it was conflicting sides of me. A part of me was like, no, do what's best for my baby. And the other part was like, well, why can't I do what's best for the community and that also be what's best for my baby? So that's what we're trying right now. And it's been really good. It is always such a blessing when we go to the bus in the mornings and in the afternoons, and all of the neighborhood children who I have in some type of way helped, supported, touched on, fed lunch, dinners, and things are there to walk her to the bus stop, to play with her as I watch them from my doorstep. It is very comforting and beautiful.
Social interest at work, like really doing it is very difficult. Like you said, as a parent, I know when my children were younger and you have this school is the best in this district, right? And you have in the United States, we have something called school, like zip code boundaries. So if you're in this area, you go to this particular school and someone always comes up with, this is the best school because it had the best math score or whatever it is. And based on who you're talking to, you get like this enticing moment. You're like, I'm going to do something to send my, we all want our children to go to that best school. Well, what happens to this school that's in our neighborhood? If we all keep leaving, who's going to make this school what you want it to be? So if parents, right? And I was thinking about it, women, we're like lionesses for our young ones when we want something. Could we not be all lionesses together to support our entire community? So instead of giving up, and when I hear you, Natasha, and I hear your compassion for the teachers, that allows the teachers to also feel calm, because I've worked with both parents who wanted their children to be like other children, or parents who are like, thank you so much for letting me know. We're now going to work with, other resources, and we're going to figure this out. Because for teachers, sometimes if you need one-on-one care for a child, it's difficult to watch them not get that care. So what we all have to also do as parents, not only if we have children who may be on the spectrum, like you mentioned, or neurodivergent, but how can we get funding in our communities for all the children who would need something? So each school, like all of us are working together in getting funding for teachers to have the tools, for our children to have the tools, because more and more, right? Remember, we've come out of COVID, 3-4 years of our children missing out on social interaction. So we all have variety of needs now. Social emotional learning. It is really, really important. And the funding has gone down because I know as positive discipline, folks are not able to, teachers, parents are not able to spend the money to take the training, which doesn't cost much. And I'm not trying to say you need to take positive discipline, but it gives me an outline like, wow, we don't have funding to take care of ourselves, to support others. Where are we going to go in 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years? And our children are our future.
And that's always my argument here. Even my friend, she gets so frustrated because when I do classes, as you know, I do an equity system where I allow them to pick what they're going to pay. And I have different tiers and everything. And when we don't get a lot of people to sign up, she's like, I don't understand this. People pay to get job training. People pay to get certifications for anything that they want to do. People pay to learn how to thread needles so that they can sew. But you tell someone to pay to learn how to understand child development, to understand social and emotional learning, to understand a balance between kind and firm in parenting children for the future. And nobody wants to pay any money. And I know
yes,
that it's a socialization issue. A lot of people really feel like they shouldn't have to pay to learn how to parent because you should just know how to parent. But that is not true. It is a skill, just like any other skill. And it's just like I tell my parents when they're complaining about their teachers, I always say, remember, one, we already talked about your home baby is not your school baby. But two, that teacher is not just dealing with your school baby. They have to think about the environment of the entire class. So it would probably be a blessing for that teacher if they just had your school baby and they were able to nurture and teach your school baby. But usually these teachers have between 10 and 30 children. And they're having to make sure that the entire classroom environment is positive, is educated, is moving with the routine. And so if your child has support needs, that is why they're telling you, and that is why they are recommending testing, because honestly, it is so frustrating for a lot of teachers currently where they're dealing with children who are not diagnosed, who are not evaluated, who do need that support. And because they don't have that support, they don't have an IEP, they don't have a means to support those children. And those children are in that classroom, usually doing attention seeking or doing power struggles or not doing anything because they have some assumed inadequacy because they've been yelled at and knocked down and told that they're not doing the right thing. Or they're doing some revenge because they know they're different and the other children have been hurting their feelings. And so now they're hurting back and they're disrupting the classroom.
You spoke about IEP also, Natasha. And so we have traditional education here, which you have the preschools and kindergarten onwards or sometimes younger students. And these public schools also have support systems. So you could have a younger child, preschool age child, and you notice that, hey, maybe there's something that they're going to need developmentally, like education intervention. We can reach out, or you can reach out to the public school and say, hey, I really just would like my child evaluated, assessed. These services are available in our own community. So that's another way. And teachers really are CEOs. They have, let's say, 20 to 30 students plus their caregiver, sometimes 1 or 2 per child. They have administration of the school and they have guidelines to meet, right? They have certain curriculum and they're in this business because they love working with children and they're getting burnt out. Lately, we've noticed we're in a big shortage of teachers. We need to support our colleges, universities, where we can provide early childhood education at an affordable rate. And we have affordability, but sometimes we don't even have courses available for them to take the classes that they need to work in the childcare industry. The wages for childcare industry are low because the teachers, they're paid with fair wages that are designated by the state, whatever that wage might be. But sometimes it's less than a person at a coffee shop. Absolutely. Secondly, it's the schools that don't have that much money because the parents pay for some of these preschools where their children attend. So when we're looking at our nations and when we're looking at equity, this is a factor that I want to bring about with the help of Natasha, where there is high need. And there are corporations, you donate money, and hopefully you can donate to the cause of your interest, knowing what deficiencies there lie for young students and teachers. There are so many people who love children. How can we get them to work with our beautiful ones, each and every one of them? And when you spoke today, it just warmed my heart, because I think once we identify that our children have uniqueness and they want to learn a certain way, and imagine a teacher who has a parent and a partnership and they say, all right, let's just try this out. And other parents aren't complaining about my child's getting pushed and hit. I don't like it. No one likes it. And no one's trying for this to continue to happen. The child's parents feel terrible. But once we understand one another, the community that we can create at school, communities we create at home, I think we have a possibility. We just have to all unite in some way.
A lot of that comes from, I see so much of kind of a parent against teachers. And I'm always like, your teacher is your community. And sometimes I'm telling my teacher, remember that these parents, they're not in your classroom. So you kind of have to share what that classroom is like. Sometimes we kind of are only in I call it main character syndrome. We kind of forget about the rest of the world. We get into that egocentric frame of just thinking about our life and what's going on in ours. But in that classroom, she's a CEO. She has all of those other children. And then even I'm supporting a few educators with incorporating positive discipline into their classroom, but they get a lot of pushback from their administrators because their administrators haven't really gotten on to positive discipline and understanding its merits, and they're more punitive based. And so the teacher is trying to implement things like classroom meetings and consequences and calming corners, but the administrators aren't really supportive of that. And so that can exhaust the teacher. There's so many different things that teacher is working on to make sure your child and 29 other children are getting educated. And so being mindful of that can be really helpful.
I think we're all looking for research-based, and there is positive discipline is in individual psychology, and there is a lot of data about working with children in school, having classroom meetings, like looking at something good instead of what's not working as one of the small tools, but figuring out, finding solutions together, developing skills. And then the other one is for parents, family meetings. How do you do those? And when we have programs that are long-term, they're not looking at how to stop the behaviors. We really could impact. And when we do it the same way, because we have schools in one district, they're all following different philosophies, and some are sticker systems or reward system. Well, that's eccentric motivation, right? It's not intrinsic. It's not really inviting the child to do the right thing when no one is looking, bribing, or coercing. So, it's up to individuals.
And when we start talking about our babies, meaning autistic, neurodivergent children, those things don't work very well for us.
It doesn't make sense to them, right? Like it doesn't make sense.
It does not. I'm like, okay, my husband laughed. He laughed so hard at me because when we took our children to the doctor, and the doctor asked if they wanted a sticker, and I laughed at and I said, well, what would they do with the sticker? And my husband was like, when you were a kid, you didn't like stickers? And I was like, what's the point of them? What do you do with them? You stick them on things, and then what? What is the point of a sticker? And he was like, oh, okay. At the time, my husband was getting evaluated, and he was like, now I get it. Now I see how I'm not autistic. I get it. Cracking up. But Jonathan said, they don't care about stickers. What does that mean? Like, you get a gold star. Okay. And what does that mean? So we're very logical and analytical at times. Stickers and things like that usually don't work. Or it could be the exact opposite, meaning we can put too much emphasis on it, and that gold star could mean that we're a good person. And if we don't get a gold star, we feel like we're a bad person, and we will hurt ourselves and really think low of ourselves because we didn't get that gold star. So we can take things to the extreme because our perception is different.
Very important awareness. So I think there are a lot of factors to consider and to take a look at. If you like this podcast, please don't forget to follow. Let us know what more you want to hear about. Thank you, Natasha, for speaking to me. We're going to keep talking about a lot of different topics along the way. This is not the only one. We're just starting with this insight and starting the year off in schools and not switching classrooms and schools, and just encouraging our children and understanding ourselves, what our capacity is. Capacity for our children is just so beautiful. Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, yogipatel.com.